LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.
Good evening, a cold evening in the United Kingdom. It's cold today in London. I don't know where you are, but it's been freezing. I'm sitting here in layers of clothing. But today we're going to talk with a mom. We all know, if I borrow the words of Shakespeare, that death is a necessary ending and it will come when it will. But what happens when it comes to a child, and how does a mother recover, if she ever does, about losing a child, and how does life go on? Today we're going all the way back to Southern Africa. We're going to Zimbabwe again, and I have a lady who lost a child, as I said. How she's managing, how she's kind of discovered needs around mental health and advocacy, and how life has been, and how, the journey has been for her. So if you join me as we welcome, I've been practicing her name, Zandile. Good evening.
Hi, Lydia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
I know we were talking a little bit before we came on about church, and I know you go to a different kind of church, a different denomination. I shouldn't say church from me. So it's a different time. I was sharing about how a lot of Pentecostal churches are fasting, but for you it's a different time. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, so we can learn? Everyone can learn from you today.
Okay. I go to an Anglican church, which is basically called the Church of England, because it started in Britain. So for us, it's actually a celebration, because this is a period when one Sunday we were celebrating when Jesus Christ was baptized. So this week, actually, that's when we also have our strategic meetings, because I'm part of the evangelism team.
Mm-hmm.
So we, just like businesses do their strategic meetings, as a church, we also do our strategic meetings. And we are in the process of doing what is called LCBN, which is a result-based ministry. So by the second day of the week, we do our rededication week. As I was saying, I couldn't be with you because we have those services from 6 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are celebrating, you can choose to fast, but to us, we are celebrating the baptism of Jesus Christ. Because according to the Bible, this is according to our calendar. And according to the Bible, then he went to be baptized by John the Baptist.
Okay.
And then he's then shown to the world as Christ. So according to our calendar, this is when it actually happened. That is after, because Lent is about his coming.
Yes.
So now it's about when he's about to start his ministry.
Mm-hmm.
When he was baptized at 31, which is, I guess, a 30 for another day, when he had to start his ministry. So I was saying, with us, you can decide to fast, and when you're fasting, you give up something. So my death is sugar. I love my sugar, because I went to boarding school. That's what I was sharing. I'm a chocolate person. So if you want to spoil me, give me chocolate.
That's a difficult thing to give up, I must admit, because I love chocolate.
Even sugar, I can literally eat sugar off my hand because
okay, I'm not that bad, but I'm a dessert and chocolate person, so I understand. I would be suffering withdrawal symptoms.
I've got a sweet tooth, so basically what I then try to do is replace it with dates, with the natural sugars. Then I'm fine. If I do dates, if I do raisins, then that craving at least is replaced by simple sugars. Yeah.
Okay. So something naturally sweet. So it's well, sweet and healthier, or healthier than kind of refined sugar.
I'm trying to take my tea without sugar. So what I basically do is I taste it without the sugar. Then I try and replace it with either honey or sweetener. But when you've got kids around the house,
it's difficult. And the sweets are there.
And the chocolate is there, and the cake is there. Yeah, get that.
Trying times. Okay, we kind of spoke a little bit about your identity, and I think I'm a little bit more familiar with you than the people watching. So do you want to talk a little bit about yourself, because we kind of talked about the Christian identity and what this time means for you, but please tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh, okay. Funny, when you started the program, you were saying you are cold. You are so hot here. You can bear
I can imagine it's freezing.
You can see the way I'm here. Anyway, I'm known as Zandile, Nora, Alice. I was given 3 names. Zandile and my grandmother, which means because there were more girls in our clan than boys. So when I was born and my grandmother was told that I was a girl, she called me Zandile. And what you have to understand about my grandmother is she was a wife to a priest. My grandfather was a priest, one of the early pioneers of the Methodist Church in Zimbabwe. The Methodist Church is kind of like the breakaway church from the Anglican Church.
Yeah.
So then, it was very difficult to be Christian because we had African traditional religion. That was like, we're talking in the 1800s. I come from a very rich Christian background because my grandfather was actually one of the early converts. So my grandfather died early, and as it would be, he actually died together with my father. And there's a professor who wrote about our family called Terence Ranger, because, as I say, we were one of the early, my grandfather was one of the early converts. I was never to meet my grandfather. But as Carl Jung would say, there is what is called the collective unconscious, where even if you never met your ancestor, you tend to behave like them.
Yeah.
So I fight for human rights. I'm an advocate. I'm a mother of 4. I lost a daughter who would have been 24. The church will be turning 24. So this is what has influenced my relationship with mental wellness, because when I failed to cope with the grief, I wanted to understand psychology better, so I'm a holder of an honors in psychology. After 24 years of working in a blue chip organization in finance, so I studied psychology as an adult student.
Okay. So I know from our conversations before that your daughter died quite quickly from diagnosis to when she passed. Do you want to talk a little bit about that journey?
Yes, before I talk about my daughter, I must also say I'm happily married to a husband that supports what I do because we are both type A personality. And sometimes, you have to, he basically supports what I do and I also support what I do. Sometimes he doesn't agree with me, but he respects my decision. I'm also a daughter to my 90-year-old dad, who's actually got dementia now. And I've got a very close relationship with my father because my mother went to the UK when I was two to study midwifery. So my father then became my mother and my father. Because my mother only came back from the UK when I was 12. Though the intention was for us to eventually join her in the UK. My father was a social worker and he thought the culture in the UK was not good for family. So it was their decision for us not to then migrate
to the UK.
With immigration or migration? It's immigration, isn't it?
Yes.
Whatever the English word is. So talking about my daughter, yes. My eldest daughter is 31, and I only had my second daughter 6 years after I had my first one, and I called her a blessing, which is Rokafadzo in Shona. And she was the life of the party. And she was a beautiful child. And you couldn't help it notice she was a happy child. So it was when she was 10 that she just had flu-like symptoms. She was a child that would never miss school. And I think Fadzio, we used to call her Fadzio. Fadzio, if you're not going to go to school, you must know that you're not going to watch TV because, as any parent, you just assume that it's a child that just wants to miss school. But then I realized that it was unlike her. And she also had that flu when I had learned that you don't treat flu with antibiotics because flu is a virus. So normally I would wait out managing temperature. But then what was very peculiar at that particular time was the temperature was really not coming down with the paracetamol or the Panadol. And I then took her to the emergency room. So they did the same. They also tried to manage the temperature by, what they do to wrap around the child in a warm, lukewarm towel and giving the antibiotic and the paracetamol. That didn't work, so they thought it was malaria. And at that time, it was in 2008, and that was a difficult year for us economically, but we were okay because we could afford to buy our own medication, and we could afford we could afford treatment, and like others, anything that knows about 2008 in Zimbabwe will tell you about it was an inflationary period where, yeah, you can just read about it. So they then took blood, and then the doctor, the lab technician to us then said, there's something wrong with the blood composition. I think you might need actually take the results to a pediatrician. And then we thought, it's probably maybe because they don't have the right chemicals to process this blood. Let's do the second because I could see by the face of this
technician.
Yeah, that it was something that was very wrong. So we went to another lab to get another set of tests, and we were trying to figure out precisely where to take her, because a lot of doctors were using the country, and the pediatrician was actually there. And because she was 10, we were trying to figure out whether does she go to a physician, does she go to a pediatrician, and which pediatrician. So I consulted a friend of mine who was a doctor, and we got there. For some reason, she had not done the research to figure out which pediatrician to send us to. So we ended up just going to one of the clinics. We got there. Things were just not working in that way. But she ended up being admitted, ended up with a pediatrician who was not really good at their job, I must say, because medicine is a calling, and yeah, things were just going wrong. There were other pediatricians that were good. I think one was called the Dr. Bannerman and one was called the Dr. Paja, but unfortunately, we were just not referred to them because not enough research had been done. She was admitted there, and we realized the blood was not clotting, the diagnosis came, and some were saying she gets treatment, the first treatment with the chemo, but she might need a bone marrow transplant. However, things were just hectic. We didn't even have blood and blood at that particular time. So things were just happening too fast. But I just assumed she because her diagnosis was aplastic anemia. But according to research, survival rate was 70-30, and we never said it would be part of the 30%. And she could have been treated in Zimbabwe, but however, because most of the oncology doctors left, the option was to go to South Africa for treatment. From the first 2 weeks were hectic, trying to figure out what to do. Then she was eventually enlisted to Johannesburg Hospital after 2 weeks, and we didn't have precedent, so we had to give up one of our cars for her to be enlisted to Johannesburg Hospital. It was a decision between her going to a private hospital or Johannesburg Hospital, because apparently Johannesburg Hospital is a teaching hospital, so they actually said, though it was a public hospital, she had better chances there because there were more specialists there. So with the early stage, we got there, and she was admitted, and to cut a long story short, she eventually had her kidneys failed. It was also a bad time for us because there was xenophobia in South Africa in 2008 in June. And the nurses, they were not giving us attention. They'd come and sleep in the linen cabinets because we were not speaking their language. It was difficult. I remember there was a nurse. One nurse was very good, but she was a Botswana nurse. Struck up a relationship with her. But the other nurses that were South African, basically, it was just so from diagnosis to date, it was 6 weeks.
So it sounds like
the
going
two,
from thinking she had just the flu to ending up with a diagnosis of a type of blood cancer. Yeah. And then you had to now go to another country. So you had to leave kind of your support system. Did you leave your husband behind and your older
yes,
daughter?
the two other daughters, because there was my elder daughter, then another daughter was younger than me, who was at that time 7. So 6, because we actually left her when she was young, because we had to stay with the other 2 girls.
The other 2 girls.
Yeah, we didn't want to disrupt their education. But then 2 weeks after we were in Johannesburg, they also were giving a strong antibiotic to see if they could keep up the system. Then she went into a coma. I actually think she died because they tried to revive her, and then she didn't. I had to ask my husband to come because I couldn't understand what was going on. But then we came, we were in the ward together. Then a week after we had been in the ward together, that's when she died, because we were taking turns to watch her.
So after some of the treatments,
watching her, that she died. Yeah.
Okay, I think internet has gone off, so we'll give it a few minutes in the hope that she'll log back in.
I don't know how I look.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for you to come back in.
Yeah. So yeah, she died on the 18th of June. It was terrible. And in this is a journey. I have since accepted her death. You go through the motions of the cycle of grief. You move from denial, then acceptance, and I think accepted her death, but it doesn't mean that I don't miss her. It doesn't mean that other days are waste, because now I grieve for the stages, like I ask myself, what would she be doing now, and things like that. Yeah. So that's where we are.
So I guess what you're saying is that I think for a child it's difficult, because even if it's a parent, an older parent that passes, we can remember them, but we remember them through their life. But for a child, the life stops, and what you're saying is, well, I remember her and I imagine what she would do now that she would have been, how old would she have been by now?
She was born in 97, so this year she would be turning 24.
Yeah, so she would be 24.
Yeah, is that right? Yeah.
No, 97? Was she born in 97?
Yeah. So we are now going into 20.
Yes, so she would, 97, she would be about 25, I think, this year.
She would be 25, yeah. Because she was born in December. She would have turned, she was born on the 20th of December.
Okay.
So basically, and she loved Christmas. So she'd always say, Mommy, I'm getting my birthday present and my Christmas present, and she'd always hint, this is what I want. So even this year, I can actually see the present because she'd hint to it that, this is what I want. She'd always tell you this. But one thing, each year she'd get something significant for her birthday and
Okay.
for the
And
Christmas.
I know from the last time we met that you have something that you do in her memory, which is the planting of trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try and plant. I used to release balloons until I learned that it wasn't good for the environment.
So something
yeah,
of life that represents her.
Yes, and then we always light a candle on her anniversary, whether on the day that she died or on her birthday. And then I also go to the oncology ward at the public hospitals. And normally I do participate for them, for the kids.
Okay, yeah. So you kind of serve, like do something in memory of her, as well as with children that are unwell and hopefully on their way to recovery. So how, I think when I hear you talk about your story, it's like, must have been quite a shock to go from being at home, having the flu, getting this really big diagnosis, going to a different hospital. But all the time, I know you must have been praying and believing that, God would intervene and she would be okay.
Yes.
Okay. So how did you kind of, accept her loss? I know it's difficult, but how were you able to reconcile your faith and, and the loss?
I quarreled with God. And they actually say, there are some people that say it's not right to question God. But then if you were made in the image of God, it means they are rational beings, isn't it? We've got autonomy. And we choose, God. This is why we're a given choice. So I literally would have conversations with God where I would question that if he could save my child, why could he not save her? What has she done wrong? And then there's another book that was written, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. I also drew a lot of strength from that. And because it happened when I was customer facing in a financial institution, actually in the bank, I was a customer advisor. A lot of customers could see I was struggling, so they would also offer support. But the loudest thing that I then did is when antidepressants were recommended to me, I didn't take them and I should have. Because there is a lot of altering of chemicals within the body that happens. Now I actually have that knowledge because of the basic knowledge that I have in psychology, through the honors that I did in psychology. That sometimes it's like
okay, I'm here. Yes, I can hear you.
Just like you take medication for high blood pressure or for heart, for kidneys. We can also. Hi.
Hi, I'm here. I think it went static for a bit, but I'm here.
I don't know what's happening with the reception. Can you hear me?
I can hear. Yes, you're talking about medication. You were talking about having this discussion with God after your daughter passed. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me? Oh, the internet has gone again. Just when she was talking about her journey and after her daughter had passed, how she went into questioning God, the books that she read that helped her, the answers she kind of got, was trying to figure out her way out, and why God had allowed for her child to die, to come home early or earlier than she would have imagined. Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Okay, you were
Yes.
talking about after your daughter passed and your journey. Can you hear me?
Yes, I could. Can I continue?
Yes, please.
Hi.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me or see me? I can see you and I can hear you.
I don't know what's happening.
Okay, I can hear you, so just carry on talking. The internet is gone again, so we'll give it a couple of seconds. It's been coming on and going off. So hopefully she'll be able to log back in. The internet is causing us to struggle a little bit today. Can you hear me? I can see you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I can see you. Can you hear me?
Hi, Lydia.
Hi. So maybe the headphones, without the headphones, might work better.
Let's figure out what happens without the headphones.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. I can hear you, so just keep on talking. Okay. So you were
Okay.
talking.
So
Yeah, you were talking about having lost your daughter and kind of having conversations with God around what happened and how He permitted it.
Yes, it kind of like reminds me of a movie that's called Conversations with God. It's actually there on YouTube of a gentleman that actually lost everything in 2011 in those what is it 2811
Okay,
in
9/11
America.
in America, the Twin
9/11.
Towers.
Okay.
Yeah.
9/11, yes, where he basically lost everything and he had to start again. So I
Mhm.
can kind of like relate to that, because then I was having conversations with God
Mhm.
to try and understand why he would let my daughter die when he could have prevented it.
Mhm.
And I would struggle with the Lord's Prayer when we get to "Thy will be done." But eventually I then accepted. However, when it was 5 years after I'd accepted the death of my daughter, that I then had a nervous breakdown and I didn't understand. So what I actually think happened is to cope with the grief.
Mhm.
Normally, when you are grieving, what usually goes first is sleep. You become sleepless.
Mhm.
And I actually didn't know that when you haven't slept for 3 days, you're actually supposed to get medication so that your brain can rest.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So what I would then basically do is I would I would not sleep for like 3 days.
Mhm.
Then I would take caffeine-rich syrups and substances
Uh-huh.
during the day, because I would want to run my errands, like I had a small business that I was running, and taking the kids to school. And sometimes I would actually literally sleep on like a stop sign because I would be tired, because my body
Mhm.
would be
Mhm.
tired.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I
This is
didn't know
while
that I was
while driving. You'll fall asleep
yes,
at the
yes,
wheel.
it's actually called narcolepsy.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's the psychological term.
Mhm.
Then I would park the car and get a power nap and then continue. But then because I've taken caffeine, you would find that then at night, I wouldn't then sleep.
Mhm.
So when I had my nervous breakdown, I remember
And you
it was,
kind of carried on like this for 5 years, in and out.
yes, because I lost for 3 years. Okay, it was for 3 years.
Mhm.
Because I lost my daughter in 2008 and my nervous breakdown was in 2013.
Okay. Okay.
So it was after 5 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I also had postnatal depression,
Mhm.
because we had agreed with my husband that we were not going to have any more children.
Mhm.
But because I was grieving, my guard was kind of like down. Then I fell pregnant. And when I fell pregnant, I didn't want this child.
Mhm.
And I started worrying about it, because I would have these nightmares of her drowning, because we've got a pool at our house.
Mhm.
So I would ask my husband to get the pool covered. And he would say, but the child cannot even crawl yet.
Mhm.
So he couldn't understand where I was coming from, because my worst fear as a mother is losing a child or
Mhm.
losing a loved one. So the best thing that he could have done for me was just to cover the pool
The
with a
pole.
net.
Mhm.
Yes, but he didn't.
Mhm.
So initially it was the postnatal depression, and then I kind of like then learned that no matter what you do as a parent, you can still lose a child.
Mhm.
So my firstborn, my eldest child, is the one who kind of like took over the role of looking after this baby.
The new
A
baby.
lot of people actually thought, a lot of people actually thought it was her baby. because I would let them even go to church together, spend a lot of time together. And even my husband is the one who took over the role of looking after her, because I was grieving, I was depressed.
So
I didn't want
not
it
kind of engaging with your grief from when your daughter passed. You were just kind of functioning. You were doing, going to work, doing everything, but you were in kind of overdrive. And then the grief and the depression.
I did go for I did go for grief counseling, and then the grief counselor, it was actually with Island Hospice. They are very good grief counselors. But then when she realized we were not getting anywhere, she wanted to hand me over to a psychologist. But the psychologists wanted cash, and I thought I could do it alone. And just like we go from our physical ailments to a GP. With your brain, you need to go to someone who can help you unravel. And usually the first thing is talk therapy before you go onto the chemicals. So it kept escalating because I was literally messing up my system. Because I wasn't coping, I wasn't sleeping and things like that. And then my trigger is lack of sleep. And at that time, it was actually after a funeral wake. You know how we have funeral wakes, where when someone dies, you spend the whole night singing and praying and things like that. So that's what actually led to my nervous breakdown. It was in August of 2018. So I've actually literally been living with my mental health condition since 2013. My diagnosis is actually bipolar. And they say the trigger can be trauma. As my trigger was the loss of my child, though it might actually, they say that there are some people that are just susceptible to mental health conditions, just like we say someone is susceptible to cancer because of the history and things like that. And with mental health, because it's least understood, you will find that no one is actually prepared to share about someone that had a mental health condition. And even if you had a family member that was suicidal, it's rarely spoken about. We openly talk about hypertension and cancer and HIV, but about mental health, because there's a lot of stigma around it, very few people are ready to admit to having a mental health condition. And I've had 2 nervous breakdowns so far. The second nervous breakdown was when I lost my stepmother. And because I had reduced my medication and I was stressed, I wasn't also sleeping. I had an episode when I was actually in my class, in my lecture. It was hectic. So what basically happens is when I have my episodes, I feel like there's danger everywhere. So what people have to understand is there's the template that has been spoken about of how bipolar people behave, like that. It's risky behavior. It's what we are not all the same. Because it depends with what the trigger is, just like we've got the different cancers. And because it's for dramatization, media has also not been the best for people with mental health conditions, because for effect, they will portray someone who's got a mental health condition. They'll dramatize it to be such a bad thing, But then for as long as
manageable, but for most people it is.
Yes, for mine, it's managed. When obviously when I had my nervous breakdown, we know with antibiotics, isn't they'll say what will determine how much antibiotic you get is your weight and things like that. But then with mental health conditions, apparently, I understand they're supposed to do some blood tests to see like what chemicals are in your body. But however, because you are in a crisis, they will overdose you and you become a zombie. And because you become a zombie, you don't like how these drugs are making you feel, because that's basically what makes people not adhere to their medication, because it takes time for you to get a balance. Because for me, I was started on a very high dose, but we've worked with my doctor for me to be manageable, so that, because remember, I will also be producing my own chemicals, and then they are now giving me these chemicals, and now my body is trying to get used to it. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I must say, my husband has been very supportive, because he would actually go in with me with the doctor to understand my illness. Because if it hadn't been for him and his support, I probably wouldn't have coped. Because now who is moving into a situation where people with mental health conditions are not taken out of society, because what we see and what we don't like is the behavior. So for me, I wouldn't want my children to leave. I also wouldn't want him to leave and go anyway, because I would see like there is danger out there.
Yes.
So I'll be behaving like a computer that is misfiring, or that has got the wrong software, because our brain is like a computer. It's just like an organ, just like the heart and the kidneys. So we respond to stimuli, and we receive stimuli through our ears, our eyes, and our hands. So when you've got too much of certain chemicals, it means your brain is reading them wrong. The interpretation is wrong. So even if danger is at 1, my body will be like danger is at 1,000. Am I making sense? My brain will be like danger is at 1,000. So the way my behavior to the response of that danger is not correct. And in Shona we say munhu anopenga nezvaanoziya, which basically means that the way I'm going to behave is going to be informed by how I was socialized. So if I was socialized to believe in witchcraft, if I was told that at some point this lady is a witch, I no longer have emotional intelligence. I'm not being rational. So you will walk in, and because at some point probably maybe we had a tiff, I will say, Lydia, I know you hate me. But then if I'm functioning, I would never be able to say that to you.
Yeah. So, and when all the chemicals are balanced and everything looks okay, you won't behave. So, I mean, thank you for being so honest and actually normalizing it. So what you're sharing is equal to somebody who has high blood pressure and they have a trigger that makes the blood pressure go up, or somebody who's on insulin who is diabetic, either has too much sugar or not enough sugar, and they need, their insulin to kind of regulate. So thank you for making
it's like the liver, the brain.
Yeah.
The brain is just an organ. It's just that because due to ethical reason and just that we don't see how it's functioning. What we see is the behavior that we don't understand. And now this is why we say, as Africans, we'll say it's witchcraft.
Is witchcraft, yeah. Because I think most of the time, mental health has almost gone into a place where we demonize everything. So everything is, there is no room for it to be chemically balanced,
To be
hormones.
medical, yes.
to be
As much
medical.
as we understand, because even with psychologists, they will say we don't consider an individual's religion. However, as Christians or as humans, we've always worshipped something, you know.
Yes.
So there's also that spiritual aspect of things,
of
though
it,
we do not pay too much attention to it. So with my organization, even though I've studied psychology, because I'm a Christian, I understand the spiritual side of things
spiritual
as
side
well.
of it.
Just like before the Europeans came, we had our own religion. And if you look at the principles of all religion, it's basically the same. Do not steal, do not go. If you understand it, it's just that now the missionaries wanted us to grab Christianity. They demonized our own religion. But in my view, they should have said, okay, this is your religion and this is what is good about it, but this is what is bad about it. You know, just like there are bad and good things about it. And as far as I am concerned, I was born a Christian for a reason. And my parents followed Christianity for a reason. And the best thing I can do as a Christian is to convince them why they should come to Christ, because Christianity is simpler, you know. We just look to the cross. Whereas with African tradition, it's either your father did not do this and you must do that, and you know, it's one thing after another. It's not straight.
Becomes quite complex.
Yes, it doesn't end. You know, you have to slaughter that cow or slaughter that chicken. That the witch doctor will actually eat. So if it is, who am I sacrificing to? Am I sacrificing to you? Am I sacrificing to God? You know, it gets complex.
It does. So let's
but
talk a
Christianity,
little bit about,
it's simple.
let's talk a bit about the advocacy work. So
Yes.
I mean, losing a child, having a breakdown, and in trying to understand yourself. I know that's part of your ethos. You went off and went to study, you know, psychology, because you kind of wanted to make sense of what was happening, because obviously it felt like nobody around could really explain. So you thought, I can read this, I can learn what's going on with me, and then I can accept some of the diagnosis and, you know, figure out the medication. But I know you also sort of went the extra mile to become a mental health advocate as well. Why did you think that was necessary?
I wanted to give a face to my diagnosis. Because remember, AIDS was a mystery until we had people coming out to say, you know, I have the condition. I'm a mother. I'm a father. You see. So I want to be the face of my bipolar condition. Because if according to who, 1 in 4, it used to be 1 in 5. But now they're actually saying if 1 in 4 is living with a mental health condition or will have a mental health condition in their life, It means all we have to do is count to see how prevalent mental health is.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's not getting enough support, and a lot of people don't know about it. And there's a lot of stigma in seeing a mental health practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And the mental health practitioners are not getting the recognition that they deserve. They train a lot, but people still don't want to pay to consult a mental health
Yeah.
practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
But we pay to get our head done. We
Mm-hmm.
pay for a nurse aid. But these people would train for a minimum of 4 years. I mean, a surgeon can unravel because they can see what's going on, isn't it? But with a mental health practitioner, this is why the sessions are so long initially, because it's so difficult to unravel someone's brain,
Mm.
because you sit down and talk and talk and talk until you, yeah, because the first treatment is talk therapy. And when the talk therapy doesn't help, that's when maybe you are moved to drugs to sort out the chemical imbalance. So that's why I started the advocacy work. And even when I started it, my husband was like, but why are you doing this? Why do you want everyone to know that you have this problem? Because in our culture, which basically means you don't tell people your problems.
Yeah.
Because if you noticed how we always share the positive testimony at church.
Yeah, church, but nobody tells the journey or the real truth.
Yeah. Because it means when I was talking to God, I had to ask why my daughter had to die, you know, because even in the Bible, it doesn't mean just because you're a Christian, things are going to be okay for you. As they say, we will all struggle.
Yes.
But what is popular is the prosperity gospel than the struggle gospel. And there's actually a pastor that wrote about this. There's a book that I read, I'm forgetting the title, that problems don't sell, hey? It's not that pastors don't get depressed. They get depressed because they are also human. But that doesn't sell. That's why they have to sell prosperity. So that's where my advocacy work is. My organization at the moment is not yet registered, though I'm also part of the team that's coming up with the strategic strategy for mental health with WHO, teaming up with the Ministry of Health and Child Care. So my organization is a charity organization. I just create awareness and talk to anyone that wants to hear. I'm also an advocate for children with learning challenges because my daughter is on the spectrum. And because there are no resources, all I do is I go and talk about myself within the platforms, within my network, whether it's the church, whether I'm in a bus, whether we are walking. I will talk about mental health. I eat and breathe mental health, and I'm doing it more out of passion than out of money.
And what's the response, because you're so open and sharing this on a subject that even for some people feel it's a taboo? What response do you get from people when you're saying, what, I suffer from this?
People will come to my inbox because some will not openly come. So my work is to point them in the right direction, because I am not a practitioner, I'm not a counselor, but I'll show them where to go. The only sad part is sometimes people don't want to go there and they don't want to pay to go there. They can pay a GP, like I said, but they are not yet ready to pay a practitioner. But we are getting there. We are getting there slowly. So in Europe, they would call me like a mental health worker. So I'm knowledgeable in mental health, and I can point you in the right direction that you either need a clinical psychologist. A clinical psychologist is the person that manages you in the clinical side of things, the chemical side of things, or you either need an educational psychologist, because educational psychologists are in education. So I just kind of like point you in the right direction.
Signpost people to the right
Yeah,
place.
yeah, that's my work.
That's your work. Okay. We've come to time. What would you like to leave us with? So anybody who's watching, a mom or dad, or somebody who's lost somebody close to them that we know, yes, the person isn't going to come back, but what can you share with them?
I would say it's obvious that we all need to be taught how to manage grief, which is something that we are never taught at school. Because if you look at my banner, it actually says, I wish psychology could be taught in schools. I wish grief could be taught in schools at a young age. And I would also like to say that it is important for us to understand psychology, and for us to actually understand that going to consult a psychologist when you are depressed is not a sign of weakness, and depression is not something that you can snap out of, because it's a medical diagnosis, and that grief is a journey and not a destination, and that the best thing we can ever do for each other is to support each other and listen to each other as we speak. Would have less suicides. I think that's summing it up. That's basically what I can say.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your journey so honestly. I know we didn't get time to talk about your daughter and parenting a child with special needs, so I'm sure you'll get another invite where you can come and talk about how it's your last girl that has special needs, isn't she? That she's on the spectrum, and I remember we talked about her the last time we met. So thank you again.
My pleasure. And my eldest daughter as well has openly opened up to having depression in college. So she's a lawyer. So it's a family thing. It's just we should openly talk about this thing.
About when we're struggling.
Yes, and the stigma for mental health must really fall.
Must come down. Yes. Okay. Thank you again.
And thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
All right then.
Okay, so another evening of talking about how there can be purpose in pain. It must have been a really difficult time for her and her family, but God has found a way to use it for good. And she's now advocating. As I said, she does have a daughter who has special needs, but she'll be back again to talk about how she's managed with raising her. So until we meet again, my name is Lydia Khalil. Thank you for watching this conversation.
LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.